As long as you are still being cognizant of the fact that whatever you're doing, it still has impact on people. We have to never forget that human element.
Yeah.
Many organizations, teams, people, all the things in between, they forget about the human element a lot. They lose sight of that big picture and the human element. That's one thing that all of the space things that I've been fortunate enough to participate in have really been strong reminders and created these really static fixed points within myself to keep me reminded of that.
The Digital Banking Podcast is powered by Typhone. Typhone is the creator of Infinia, a dramatically better digital banking platform for community financial institutions, as well as several platform-agnostic revenue-generating point solutions. Our highly configurable platform and broad ecosystem of third-party partners ensure our entire suite is scalable and extensible to meet the needs of any FI. On our podcast, you will hear host Josh DeTar discuss today's most pressing financial technology topics with seasoned industry experts from every possible discipline.
Your podcast hasn't officially made it until there's ads in it, but this is one you're not going to want to skip past. And if you do, feel free to hit that fast forward 15 seconds button twice. Ever wonder what gives me my energy and enthusiasm during these podcasts? Outside of my relentless desire to learn about, connect, share, and build up community FIs and their mission to support the communities they serve, it's coffee, and lots of it. Now, you want to know what's better than your regular old coffee? How about donating $5 to the Children's Miracle Network hospitals through Credit Unions for Kids every time you purchase high-quality, ethically sourced coffee that also provides living wages to coffee farmers? So if you want to listen to this episode with epic levels of caffeine-induced focus and help kids in need, head to javaforkids.org to learn more and buy a bag or 10. Thanks. Welcome to another episode of the Digital Banking Podcast. My guest today is Monica Parks, the Chief Information Officer at Bank3. Don't let her accent fool you. There's no bless your heart in Monica. I've been absolutely dying to get Monica on the podcast for a while, and I almost had to drag her on because she's one of those people that just doesn't want or need to be put on a pedestal. That being said, Monica is just rad. I could try to think of bigger, more sophisticated words to describe her, but I think that's the one. She's just rad. She's unapologetically, authentically herself. Monica's comfortable saying the uncomfortable thing. She's fearless in challenging the status quo. She doesn't take no for an answer. She has a super cool sleeve of tattoos. She went from a credit union to a bank. How often do you hear that? But make no mistake, this doesn't mean she's some crude, rough and tough Neanderthal. Actually, quite the opposite. She's wicked smart, incredibly thoughtful and caring, and way too humble for someone that has done as much as she has done. And, fun fact, Monica is a digital banking podcast first. She is the first ever analog astronaut I've ever had on the show. And I cannot wait for this episode to start. So without further ado, let's get to talking about what space, banking, and doing the right thing all have in common. So Monica, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh. A very kind introduction. I appreciate it. While I'm over here hiding behind my hands, embarrassed, but thank you. I accept and receive it.
You should. Seriously, I've been absolutely dying to get you onto the podcast for a very long time. Spoiler alert, folks. You're probably going to figure this out throughout the rest of this episode, but I've told Monica this before, but she is like in my top 3 must follow LinkedIn people. Like just the no shenanigans stuff you want to hear and stuff that's happening in the industry and like the just lay it out there perspective on it. It comes from Monica. Like I always take good stuff away from your LinkedIn posts. So yeah, you're a must follow. You're a ton of fun to be around. And yeah, you've just got a really interesting perspective on life that translates into how you think about the banking world. And I think that's such a cool topic for us to talk about today. So before we go any further though, I'm sure everybody is going to want to know, what is an analog astronaut, and tell us the story. So I'm going to sit back. I'm going to grab my popcorn and you tell us the story.
Yeah. Okay. So an analog astronaut, it's not in the terms of analog versus digital. So it's where a lot of people get confused over the years where I've been approached with that. They're like, so what's the opposite of analog? A digital? I'm like, no, it's not like that. So basically think of it like in American football, you've got your game day that you're going to go play. But before you have game day, you have your scrimmage, right? So that's where you're going and the coach is testing all of the plays that they're thinking about doing. They're doing research on their opponent and seeing, hey, we need to look at all of these processes and protocols and all of these things. And you're testing it out to see how you're going to do it when game day actually hits. So an analog astronaut is so different. NASA started this program many years ago where they have analog missions where it is everything that you would experience on mission day, except you're not leaving the atmosphere. So it is still contained in a bubble. It's a sandbox environment. So no different than the tech space that we all live in. You're testing processes, protocols, crew interaction, isolation, communications, all of it. So my mission was about 4 years ago, and I was at the time only one of a handful of what I would call true civilians that has been blessed with the opportunity of getting to call themselves an analog astronaut. Now, since my mission, we've had a lot more people and more programs, and just there's been a lot of evolution and innovation in that space where there's a lot more involvement in things, which is great because it's giving people experience and then learnings that you can take from those experiences that we haven't really had before. Because it used to really be locked down, if you will, to just a select niche group of people. It was the same rinse and repeat. But again, we all know if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you always got. And so it's the same thing. So for me, I've always been an advocate for the terminology that we've been hearing since the 80s, which is space is for everyone. But up until the last couple of years or so, you really weren't seeing that in reality. For me, my love for space started in first grade. I was in first grade in 1986, and like many other people in my generation, we were sitting in our classrooms on January 28th, 1986, the day that we lost Challenger. And Krista McAuliffe was set to be the first civilian astronaut to get to go to space and teach from space. And she was the one who started saying space is for everyone because she's, look at me, I'm getting to go. And she got to start that journey that unfortunately she didn't get to finish. But the impact that she had on so many people has just been rippling through time. From 1986 to now, it's something that I have often heard, and it had a lot of impact on me. Matter of fact, I wear a bracelet now on my arm, so space is for everyone, and I wear it just about every day of my life. But it is. It can mean many things. To me, it's not just in the space industry. You don't have to be in the space industry for space to be for everyone. It's also a reminder, too, that here on planet Earth, we are all citizens on this planet, regardless of where you come from, what language you speak, what religion you follow. If you follow one, it doesn't matter. We are one big giant cohort as a humanity. And so my space journey began where there was a nonprofit that was starting up that their primary mission was to provide a way where everyday civilians like myself and you and anybody else that is not in the astronaut corps to be able to have a way to go to space, to experience the overview effect. And if you're unfamiliar with the overview effect, I highly encourage you and listeners to Google that and look. Dr. Frank White coined that term many years ago, where the overview effect is for all of humans to be able to see Earth from space and understand how there are no borders, there are no walls. We are all one person, one people, one humanity on this planet that we all exist on. And it's a very interesting concept for sure. So this nonprofit had formed wanting to have fundraising ways and etc. to be able to pay for the everyday civilian to go on the rides that are becoming available through programs like Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, there's other entities out there that are up and coming. The space of it has in and of itself has changed a lot, even since my mission. But most people have a general, oh my gosh, it's just a millionaire's play toy to be able to catch a ride on the Virgin Galactic or Blue Origin or anything else that's similar. But there's also, of course, you're going to have some of that. But that's not where I want to focus. Where I want to focus is there's also some beautiful things that are happening with some of these people that are being awarded these opportunities to get to go. Some of these people that have been able to participate in this are making monumental changes to all kinds of things. And I highly encourage people to look past the Playboy playbook scenario and really start looking at some of these crew members that are fortunate enough to go on these flights. So with that aside, this nonprofit called Space for Humanity, they were really pitching to try to drive that initiative. And I had applied for a program to be chosen to go on one of these space rides. And it was a long process. You go through all this application stuff. You had to submit an essay of why I should be chosen. And then there's all these rounds. You make it past this round and this round. And that whole application process in the early days went through a couple of years. And through all of that, one of the offerings that came up was, hey, while we're waiting for this process to happen, we want to introduce you to this other program that's available called SpaceKind. And SpaceKind, which you can look at spacekind.org and learn more about that, that was founded by Loretta Whitesides. And Loretta and her husband, who is George Whitesides, he was former NASA chief of staff. And now he is, and I'm finding myself, he's a politician now in the state of California. I can't remember if he's a senator or a congressman. I believe he's a congressman. So my bad, I don't remember at the moment. But
I was just saying, I'm like, I know the name, but I'm struggling. Yep.
Yeah, but he's in California in the LA sector. But anyway, he also was the president and CEO of Virgin Galactic for a long while, which was founded, of course, by Sir Branson. Anyway, it wasn't a leadership training that they had on site for a while. And then Loretta's mission in life was to put that in the hands of everyday people and really take those learnings that you could learn from this 10-week session to be able to go through your own hero's journey and move away from the 1960s version of the right stuff, where it's the bourbon and whiskey and smoke-filled rooms, all of the same people, copy-paste, regurgitating the same mindset, the same baggage, all of those things, and just putting the same thing out there. Again, if you do what you've always done, you get what you always got. And really put this in the hands of everyday people where you could learn what is really the right stuff. And it's really learning how to process, manage, and deal with the things that we carry as humans. Because at the end of the day, it's about you and your crew, whether it's you and your crew of 1 or 2 or 202 or 22 or anything in between and beyond. So it really is a beautiful program that she has built. They are now on cohort like 20 something, I believe. And I was in cohort number 2. So I was there at the beginning. Cool. And I highly encourage people to check it out. And she has several books published about it that you can find on Amazon and that kind of thing. But it really is a beautiful program. But so while going through multiple iterations of SpaceKind, it kind of came up multiple times from several of my colleagues in that space and Loretta herself, encouraging me, hey, you should apply to be an analog astronaut. And I'm like, you're crazy. It's never going to happen. I didn't go to college. I don't work in the aerospace industry. I don't work for one of these universities that's connected to the aerospace industry that does research that directly contributes to the aerospace industry. I'm a nobody. I'm a wife and mom in Tennessee in the South. Sometimes I'm so country, cornbread spills out of my mouth. I get it. Like I'm not your candidate that you would choose for this. And it just kept coming up and they kept encouraging me. And finally I said, you know what? I'm going to do it so that I could copy and paste and show you the rejection and be like, ha, I told you I'd never get picked. Much to my surprise, I apply, and sitting in the parking lot of the bank, I get a notification on my phone, you need to check your email. I look at my email and I was like, wait, what? What? This says I've been selected. I don't understand what's happening right now. They sent us to their own person. So I got picked, and it was a 16-day mission. And this mission was at a habitat known as High Seas, which is an acronym. Yay, we love acronyms. Which stands for Hawaii Space Exploration Analog Space Simulation, something like that. I'm totally butchering it, but
you gotta love a good acronym that just goes on forever.
It's too many words. But this habitat is in the same location where the Apollo astronauts trained for the lunar mission. So yes, it was Michael Collins, Neil Armstrong, and Buzz Aldrin. Everybody knows those names. So it's in the same location where all of this history took place. And so those of us that were fortunate enough to train at that facility and participate in these missions, we quite literally were in the footsteps of giants. And so you take someone like me who has loved space since first grade, didn't go to college, I'm not a scientist by traditional means, self-taught, never in a million years thought anything like this would happen. I find myself while on mission standing on the planet's largest, most active volcano, Mauna Loa, and I'm standing there going, what? Like, how did this happen? And I remember standing there at one of the days that we were there, we were in suit, going through an EVA, an extravehicular activity mission. And it's where you're in suit, you're testing comms, testing suits, helmets, we were testing all kinds of things. And I stood there for a moment and I thought to myself, this is the most Indiana Jones thing I've ever done in my life. I'm like,
without the snakes.
You're right, without the snakes. How did I get here? It was really quite humbling. My crew was fantastic. There were 6 of us. The facility itself, it took several hours to get to. Everyday people could not get to the facility. Of course, you had to have all kinds of passes and permissions and credentials to be able to get there. And once you go into that airlock, though, it's you and your crew and your mission, and everything else, that's it. Everything else is the outside, and it must remain outside as such. We were testing everything from personal research projects that each of us brought. Then there were projects we completed as a crew. And you're testing everything from communications to your life support systems, such as your oxygen, your solar, your water, the structure itself, your habitat, that's your home, your food. Yes, we lived on space food. Yes, we used alternative restrooms, we will say. Space living is not for everyone. It's not for the weak, I'll tell you that. Yes, space food is unenjoyable, as you can imagine. And it's a challenge. There's so much there that really pushes you mentally. It pushes you physically. And then you have to perform. The crew days were very long days. You start very early and you go very late. There's no couches that you're sitting on. There's no putting on Netflix to Netflix and chill for the rest of the afternoon. There's none of that. You're working basically 24/7 because you got to monitor everything. You got to look at your water. I remember one of my water containers that I used for my drinking water, I had measurements on it. Just think of an old school Nalgene cup. And I remember when I would fill my water to drink from, at the end of the night, whatever was left in your water, whether it be just a couple of cups or so, a few inches of water left. At home, what do you do with that when you're ready to go to bed? You probably just dump it in your sink, right? Most people probably do. Or they might dump it in, if they have a living plant, they might dump it in there or whatever, if you're thinking about it. But most people are just going to discard it. But in these types of environments, you can't. It was very precious because we only had so much.
Yeah.
You're only allotted so much water for your trip. So everything in your personal orbit becomes critically important. So it's your water, it's your food, nothing is wasted, everything is repurposed, and you have so much thought with every tiny little thing. But those things you can translate into your everyday life too. And I'll say, everything that I learned, all of my takeaways from that mission have had a profound, a deep impact in my life every single day since I've come out of mission. I still think about it. I still think about wasting water while I wash dishes or brush my teeth or anything that kind of becomes a mundane non-thought in your everyday life outside of it becoming a real reality when you're faced with it. So yeah, it was pretty incredible. Like I said, it was 2 weeks. We tested and performed lots of research. I could go on and on, probably a whole episode in and of itself just about that mission because there's just so much. So I say if people want to hear all of the super granular details and geek out on pictures and hear stories, I certainly can connect with them outside of this episode to deep dive on that because I could go on and on.
What I think is so cool is how many different things you took away from that you've put into practice in your life, and how you even think about how you run operations at the bank come from that. But I want to go back to something that you were talking about earlier. I've always liked space, right? I would definitely say I'm nowhere near on your level of my infatuation with space. I never really had the desire to go to space or to be the astronaut type of thing. But one of the things that when I learned about, it has always fascinated me, Monica, was that overview effect. Mm. And what I think is so interesting, especially for listeners of this podcast, right? You think about the industry you and I work in, community financial services, it attracts a certain type of personality from what I've found, right? Like for the most part, it is the people that really want to do good, that really want to have an impact. We talk about it probably ad nauseum on this podcast, but whether we like it or not, money is a core element of our lives now. It just is, right? And so being able to help people with their finances and be somebody that's in their corner can have measurable impacts on their life outcome. That's crazy to think of, but it's the reality. And so I'd like to think that tends to attract the types of people that really want to do some good. And we talk about how there's just so many different people with so many different walks of life, and there's so many different starting places or places today in terms of their finances. And as you were talking about that overview effect, right? It's like we're just a bunch of like semi-intelligent beings on this rock hurtling through space. Mm-hmm. That is literally the reality of it. And I think sometimes when you put it into that perspective, it's interesting because then you realize, and I think it would be so, like I said, I don't really have the desire to go to space. I think it's cool, but it's not like my super nerdy hobby. But I would love to go to space and experience that overview effect, because when you put it in that perspective, you realize that you're both pretty meaningless and actually super meaningful, like both at the same time.
Yep.
And that's what I keep thinking about in that sense and that's the same thing here, is it's like sometimes we think on the grand scheme of things, like how many hundreds of millions of people live here in the US, and, you know, me as one teller at a bank, like how many people can I really impact? I'm meaningless. But at the same time, you impact one person.
Yes.
And make all the difference. And you were pretty damn meaningful. And it's just, I don't know. I think there's a really cool parallel there.
Absolutely. It is. And I go back to, we've all heard and used the phrase, it takes a village. And there is so much truth in that. You can take any project that you're working on, whether it be in banking or in tech banking, if all of the things or anything outside of that, it really does take a village. And so I love being able to really peel things back that my team is responsible for, because in IT, we're not the customer facing. I'm not engaging and interacting with most of our customers. And then same thing for people in tech in the credit union space. They're not interacting and speaking with their members. But none of the functions that makes your financial institution work or be whatever it is could exist without the technology. Now,
Yeah.
once upon a time, that wasn't the case. But of course, now it is the case. It doesn't matter what that bank is, how big they are, what's going on. It cannot exist without the tech. So we quite literally touch everything. And the impact that we have, whether good, bad, and different, is there. It's there.
Yeah.
So I love being able to look at something almost a potter does clay or a child does with Play-Doh. And you look at it and say, hey, I can take this lump of nothing and I can turn it into something that is going to help and not hinder. It's going to let things blossom and bloom rather than degrade and be meaningless. I'm going to make it meaningful. And I think as long as you are still being cognizant of the fact that whatever you're doing, it still has impact on people. We have to never forget that human element. So many organizations, teams, people, all the things in between, they forget about the human element a lot. And they just really get focused on their product goals or their deadlines or their checklist, and they lose sight of that big picture and the human element. And that's one thing that all of the space things that I've been fortunate enough to participate in have really been strong reminders and created these really static fixed points within myself to keep me reminded of that. So my hope for myself is to never forget the human element. Always keep that first and foremost.
I think, yeah, I would love to think that more of us could experience some of what you experienced, or what some of these astronauts that have experienced that ovary effect have experienced. Could you imagine just how different of a world we would be? More people just realized, man, some of this little stuff, dude, it just doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
Really doesn't.
It really
In
doesn't.
the grand scheme of things, like, it really doesn't. And how do you reset what is a real priority? And when you go about your day and you realize at the end of it, that little thing didn't really matter that much. That did. I should have put more effort there. Like, just being more thoughtful and intentional about those.
Yeah.
And, I think about for myself, like, I wish I look back at different stages of myself over my own, like, personal development, right? And I'd like to think I'm nowhere near done developing and becoming hopefully a better version of myself. But like, I look back on, and it wasn't even that long ago where I feel like I was still really learning even the base, like how to figure out what was important and what wasn't. And I know for me, one of the big things that sometimes it takes something big, right? For me, it was watching my wife go through breast cancer. And it was like, man, that was just such a complete and utter, like, black and white line in the sand reset. And it made it, this is going to sound weird, but like, it made it so easy to just say, that crap just doesn't matter. Like,
Yes.
honestly, it really doesn't. Yes, I could make it matter. I could make it a big deal, but it just really doesn't. Like, does that materially move things forward in a positive manner? And if the answer to that was no, it just became so much easier to let go.
Yep.
And I think we all go through so many different journeys in life. And for you, being able to experience what you experienced, that was a really impactful journey for you that it sounds like has had like really profound effects on how you've just approached life and being around other humans. I think that's so cool. And again, just like how different would we be if we were able to all experience looking down on the earth and being like, yeah, you know what? We are kind of all on this rock, just flying through space together. Let's probably just be a little nicer to each other. I don't know. That's probably be pretty easy.
You know, empathy goes a long way. And I think that's something that I have seen a huge decline in society. I would say, especially since the days of COVID. There's something about that kind of being a data point in society. Because what did it teach us? Hey, guess what? We all got our own version of an analog astronaut experience by being in the COVID lockdowns, because it's very similar.
Yeah. That's a good point.
We all experienced versions of our food, and any consumption was altered and different. Everything looked different, right?
Toilet paper.
Yeah. Your bathroom usage was possibly impacted. It obviously was impacted with society and the disconnect that we all experienced, the isolation. Yeah. And isolation is a huge driver, whether a crew makes it or not. Really? Because it has profound impact on how you perform, how you do anything. And I'll say for us, for our mission, it was a lunar mission. And these analogs, they usually focus on two things. You're either a lunar mission or a Mars mission. Because with Mars missions, there is a huge difference in loss of communications because there's a delay. So Mars missions, you have a huge delay window for communicating to the outside world. And so that's a little bit scary if you think about yourself on a ship hurtling that far away in Mars from Earth, and you're over there doing your mission, doing your thing with your crew, but you've got like a 30-minute delay in comms. That can be life or death. So you as a crew have to be prepared. You have to be on point. You've got to be in line together, and your leadership has got to be stellar. You've got to have your together. You've got to. And then with lunar missions, it's seconds versus minutes. So there is a delay, but it's not a 30-minute delay. It's 30 seconds to that minutes. Big of a it's very short. So for our lunar mission, in those 16 days, I didn't speak to another human outside of my crew. Didn't hear the voice other than my 5 crewmates. There's no talking on the phone. There's no texting. There's no getting on WhatsApp and Signal. There's no getting on Slack or Facebook. We had protocols for absolutely everything you did. I've never seen so many protocols and rules for things as simple as using the bathroom in my life. It's almost comical. You're just like, but it was. And again, there was an end goal. There was an end goal there, but the isolation can really pose a problem. I know that following our mission, DARPA was doing some missions at that facility. Shortly thereafter, I got invited to go to be on that crew. And that one would have been a 29-day stint versus 16. I declined. Simply because it was challenging enough not being able to communicate with my family. I know I could email, but again, we're on a completely different time zone and all those things. It was massive delays. So it wasn't like I could send an email and then get an immediate response. So you still get the feel of being able to have real-time conversation. It was more like I'm like 5-6 hours ahead of them. So I send communications, but I'm not going to see it till my next day. And by then, like the information was old or dated. It was very challenging, and it wasn't all the time. So for me, I have a daughter that has some special needs. And so it was, for me, beyond those 16 days, I was not interested. It just didn't work for my family. And so I will say, okay, I had a mission. It was great, wonderful experience. I'll go apply these things in life. But I couldn't turn around and do another one even longer, twice as long, right after. There was just no way. But I say all that to say DARPA was doing some fascination studies with isolation. And they've even done some studies at that habitat where they had some technology that was a wearable that you as a crew, it was measuring by color and light how crew isolation and interaction worked. or the lack thereof. And so the colors of it would change when you were working in unison and you were all physically connected together and doing things. It would show, the colors and the lights would show how everything was symbiotic. It was wonderful. But then
Trippy.
when you weren't working together, it showed the disconnect, like literal. It was really a really interesting study.
Huh.
So yeah, isolation or crew disconnect can have a major impact. And you don't have to be in space to experience that.
Yeah. I wish I had the 100% facts of this, but I remember seeing something a while ago. I can't remember who was doing the study, but it was like one of the big major colleges, or maybe it was even literally NASA or something, maybe you'll know, has this completely, like, the world's darkest, quietest room.
Yes, I've heard about
And
this room.
no light, no sound, no
Yes.
nothing. And they have a challenge for one human to stay in there by themselves for 24 hours.
Yep.
And apparently no one's ever done it. They can't do it. They completely lose their marbles and have to be pulled out before they
That's
can
what I
make
hear.
it 24 hours. You're like, dude, you could sleep for 12 of those.
I know.
Like,
I'm so intrigued by that. I'm like, I really want to try it, but also
I do too.
I'm just like, am I crazy for that? Because I feel like
I do too.
I feel like I could do it.
I know. So I'm with you. Like, because I sit there as an outsider and I'm like, I think I could do that. I think I could
Yeah.
have the mental resiliency to pull it off. And I would love to experience it and lose my marbles and get pulled out.
Right.
And then what would I learn about myself in that? And what would you learn by going through that and thinking so confidently? Because you got to imagine anybody who's done this said exactly what you and I just said. They're like, I could totally do this. Come on, let's go. Put me in that thing. And they didn't make it.
Yeah.
Right. So there's something to it.
Oh yeah, for
Like-
sure. And I'll say, I'm not going to share too many granular details on it because I want to maintain this person's privacy. But there was a crew that embarked on an analog mission. It was the crew before mine. And one of the crew members did not have the mental resiliency to complete the mission. And as a matter of fact, they had some type of mental episode that required some pretty heavy intervention. The mission had to be disrupted. There had to be some medical and law enforcement assistance come on site and break the mission, and this person had to leave. And it was, some people just can't handle it. They're just not built for it. But that's what these analog missions are for. That's what the scrimmage games are for, is to test these things. And it's just like in tech when you're building a product and you're stress testing, you're looking at load balance, you're looking at all those things. That's what all this stuff is for, is to see how it's going to perform under this pressure, under this stress. Because when you really are in mission, when you're really deploying your product or you're launching your digital banking platform or doing those things, that's it. There's no redo. When you're in that moment, there's no redo. But when we are in these very stressful moments, like on our team, for example, there's often times where we've had, of course, super high stress days. And at the end of the day, my teammates and I, we are all like, okay, we're going to take a deep breath, because at the end of the day, we're not holding somebody's heart in our hands. This isn't somebody's life on the line. We're just going to take a moment to take a step back and say, all right, let's regroup and collect ourselves. And sometimes you have to digest that elephant one tiny little bite at a time. Sometimes it's huge chunks. And if there's no right or wrong, you just, as a crew, you just have to do what you need to do as a crew together.
I can't even, just listening to you talk about this, I cannot imagine how many parallels and little life lessons you took out of that mission for how you approach the workplace. You think about, like you were talking about, just like the number of processes to even go use the restroom and the rules around that. And it's because you think about yeah, to your point, if you are truly out there in space in a little capsule heading to the moon, there's zero room for error. There's just
Yep.
none. And you think about you're in a very controlled and isolated environment with a group of people that are very clearly aligned to a shared mission. And to some degree, yeah, use whatever your core banking or digital banking or your cards conversion. Like, yeah, you've got a crew of people in a fairly isolated environment that are all aligned towards a mission, right? But to your point, the stakes are a little bit different. Let's just be honest. You're having to navigate around different people, different personalities, different strengths and weaknesses. Just somebody being able to have the mental fortitude to go through a space mission or not, right? You're going to have people that are going to have different reactions and interactions to things that happen along the way in a project. But at the end of the day, the more you're process driven, the more prepared you are, the better you communicate, the better the outcome is going to be, period, end of story. The more variables you can control, the more you're able to predict the positive outcome. And yeah, you think about something like a space mission, and they're like, yeah, no, we are going to write instructions for how you go to the bathroom. Sorry.
Yeah.
But are you going to write instructions for how your team's going to use the restroom while going through conversion day? I would hope not.
Probably not.
You might get a little pushback from HR.
But I will say,
how much
I have written into our Go Live plan, I have written reminders for breaks. Because those things that, while some people don't even think about it, or they may seem insignificant in the grand scheme, things like stepping away, getting some fresh air, going to smoke break if you smoke, take a break to go eat a cookie, drink some tea, get you a glass of water, just step away for a second. Those things really can have so much positive impact on reframing and resetting that mind. And just because if you just keep pushing, at some point, your brain's going to say, you've got too many tabs open, bro. I'm going to shut down. I can't compute. And it's just going to stop. That's something that I made sure that we have consistent reminders. And then we have things in my office, for example. I have a lot of refreshment stuff in my office. We have a mini fridge. We've got an electric tea kettle. We have a whole tea set, like with a teapot and cups and platters. We have baskets of things. Like we have a basket that probably has 32 different types of hot tea and hot chocolate and apple cider in it. And we've got a basket that has different types of cookies and crackers and jars of peanut butter. And there's all this stuff. And it's in there all the time.
I'm coming to your office.
Because to me, I encourage that team. For one, I can get so dialed into what I'm working on that I don't go into the tech loft where the majority of my team sits. I don't get to go in there very often because I'm incredibly dialed in to what I'm doing. But I still don't want to lose those social engagements and those pulse checks with them, because I can monitor and look and see where they are with their projects and tasks, but I want to know how you are as a person. I want to know that you're okay. And so by having those moments for social engagement, by keeping those refreshments and things in my office, not only is it giving them that moment to step away, but they sit down. It's inevitable. They sit down or stand, and we'll sit there and catch up. And I'm like, so what'd you do last night? Or how was that restaurant you and your friend went to or your spouse went to? Hey, what are you doing this weekend? Or how was your weekend? Or whatever. We always have those, because that's keeping check of where they are mentally and physically, and not just where their project is. I can look at that stuff. That stuff comes secondary. Again, human element, keeping them first, because that's what matters.
And I think what's interesting too, this podcast has been a really great reminder of that for me, is, it's why the podcast got started, right? We were even talking about that earlier, is the podcast is just literally, like, Monica and I had an idea of where we were going to go and some of the things that we were going to talk about, but we didn't script any of this. We have no idea what we're talking about. Like, we're just going. And I feel like that is where the most fascinating conversation lies, right? And so that's why I think it's so pretty incredibly important to recreate that like water cooler talk. That's a real
Yes,
thing,
it is.
right? Where there's no agenda, there's no bullet points, there's no PowerPoint, there's no set objective that the conversation needs to get to or outcome that needs to come out of it. Like Monica and I could literally just start talking about whatever it is, bourbon she likes. And then all of a sudden, somehow that snowballs into, we are actually talking about a work project, but we came at it from a totally different lens. And we may never have had that conversation if it didn't start by just talking about bourbon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's just how humans work, and understanding and respecting that, and then creating opportunities and spaces for just, I don't really love the word safe, but like safe, unscripted dialogue where it's like, hey, I'm not expecting something of you. I'm not expecting anything out of this conversation. I just want to talk to Monica.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about who knows what kind of thing. But I guarantee you, like, I'm going to walk away with something far more valuable out of that conversation than something that's forced.
Yes. I will say, going again, it's still keeping at the center. It's that organic authenticity that I love and often want to make sure remains at the center, at the core. And so when I go back to the first time that I went to the Space Kind training, the first session I went to, it was on a Zoom. We get on a Zoom and there's 32 other people. And I'm already nervous because I don't know what I'm walking into. And so we're sitting there and I'm one of the last people to have to introduce myself. But as they're going through the room, you've got someone in the room I'm the chief designer for SpaceX. I'm the head engineer for the Perseverance rover that's on Mars. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, this thing said that you didn't have to be in aerospace. You didn't have to be in all these things to join this, that just anybody, regular old person, could join this. And I'm like, I'm in the wrong room. They sent me the wrong Zoom invite. Oh my God. So I'm scrambling, looking at my stuff going, I think I'm in the wrong room. This is like for the advanced people. And then they get to me and I'm like, I'm a wife and a mom in Tennessee. I'm in IT. Yeah. So I'm just sitting there going, I got nothing. All these people are like, have all these credentials that I'm sitting there going, I have nobody. This is awful. This is going to be terrible. But through all that, then when I got to the end of the 10-week session, after going through the entire My Hero's journey, I kind of had my own version of an overview effect. And I was like, wait a minute. I do have a seat at the table. I do have something to contribute. I don't have to be in somebody's box or be what somebody in society has deemed important kind of thing. So that's why I've always been an advocate for
It's really cool.
the unsung heroes. I've always been an advocate for alternative learning because not everybody's meant to go to college. And then there's even still some spaces where if you didn't go to the quote college, then we don't listen to you. Guess what? You still have a seat at the table. And that was what I think Krista McCullough often was really trying to drive home with her quotes of spaces for everyone. Because she really wanted her students, I think, to understand that none of that stuff matters. This is all for everyone. You don't have some criteria or quota to be involved in some way. And now there's been a lot of change in the government space as far as with NASA and things like that, where they've reduced some of the education qualifications for certain things. If you're going to work as an IT analyst or a cybersecurity analyst for any of the jobs posted on USA.gov, there's now changes where you don't have to have 32 years of college and 17 certifications to come and get one of these jobs. There's other ways of achieving any type of prerequisites to get in. So it does open it up a little bit more. And I hope to see not just that, but even in banking and in tech, that we don't put so much restriction and boxes around things that we don't give opportunity for some of these other individuals that have wonderful things that they could contribute. We would never get the opportunity of learning from them if we don't scoot over and have room for them at the table.
I'm like furiously trying to take notes. You give me so many things that I want to talk to you about. But one of the things that I really wanted to talk about is, because this comes up a lot on the podcast, is if you do the same thing the way you've always done it before and expect different results, you're not going to get them. You've touched on that a few times. And I think this leads into a couple of things that I wanted to talk to you about that are like similarly threaded. But I want to start with that concept of, if you just keep reproducing the same thing, the same scenario, the same variables over and over again, you're not going to get all of the edge cases. You're not going to get all the ideas. You're going to limit yourself. And it's why I think diversity, and specifically diversity of thought, is so incredibly crucial in having different perspectives. And I have to imagine that thinking about, you're sitting there terrified, like all these NASA engineers and SpaceX engineers and all these people, and they're like, and then there's just Monica. But there's a good chance that at some point they were like, oh man, we're so happy to have her perspective because she's not going to think like I am. At least I would hope that they would think that way.
Right.
And even like, I was thinking about, I don't remember even the exact specifics anymore, but it totally jogged my memory. I remember being a part of an issue that was happening for one of our customers years ago. And it was something that was happening with their core. I know nothing about a core. I've never worked at a bank or a credit union. I work at the technology company, but I'm not the technologist. I don't have a background in this. And I'm in this room with all the smart people. All the smart IT people are trying to figure this out. They're all going down this path. And I literally thought to myself, I'm like, I am an idiot. What am I doing in here? What value am I going to add? And the funny thing was, I asked a really stupid question. And I was like, this is such a stupid question. And I felt really awkward even asking it. And I asked this stupid question. And the crazy thing was, it ended up being what was wrong. And it was because everybody was so focused on this really sophisticated technical thing.
Yes.
And I don't remember. I mean, it wasn't this, but I think I was literally the one that asked, is it plugged in?
Right.
And it wasn't plugged in. You know what I mean? And so I think it is so incredibly important for us to have that. And what I think that kind of leads to is, you touched on something earlier that I think is just a really cool lesson for if people can take away from this, is you were talking about it. I've had a similar realization even recently of the how did I get here scenario. And I'm so incredibly fortunate to work with Siva and Prabhakar, our COO and CEO and co-founders. And Siva's a PhD from MIT, and Prabhakar's Chicago-Boston School of Business. And these guys are just brilliant. And their backgrounds are unbelievable. Their stories are crazy. And then I'm sitting in the room with them and I'm like, what am I doing here? I didn't go to college. I'm not the smart guy. And at some point you got to realize, no, you know what? I just got to keep taking advantage of these. I am here. And I got to do everything that I can.
I didn't know that about you. I love learning that about you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. No, I always thought I was going to go down the mechanical engineering track, and that was where I wanted to be. And I just learned I loved working with people, and I went a totally different route. And now, and again, it's one of those, I'm forever grateful to have a PhD from MIT let me sit on their executive team without a college education. And you look back sometimes and you're like, man, how did I?
Yes.
But if you always think I'm never going to get there, then you're probably never going to have the scenario where you're sitting there going, how did I get here? Because I'm here.
Yeah. I'm grateful that I had in my orbit at the time people that I guess saw something, I don't know how, but that was for them to see and maybe not for me, because the universe used them, I guess, to encourage me to apply, and I did.
Yeah.
And I totally thought that I knew what the outcome would be. I never in a million years would have thought that I would have been selected. And what's so funny is I even in my application, I called them out. I was like, hey, you've been saying since 1986, the space is for everyone. And joke's on you because you hadn't been doing that. So I called them out because, again, thinking they're never going to pick me. So I'm just going to go ahead and say what everyone else wants to say officially because it doesn't matter anyway because they're not going to pick me. Then joke's on me because I got picked. But then the commander of our, right, the commander of our crew, who is a brilliant, beautiful soul of a person whom I have so much love and adoration for, Dr. Michaela Musilova. She is from Slovakia. And Slovakia, as a country, has been through tremendous hurdles since World War II and probably way even deeper seated than that I could ever give it justice to talk about. But she has spent literally her entire adult life, I would say, trying to encourage and inspire the next generation of STEM and STEAM individuals, especially little girls, to pursue these careers because most of them, they have grown up in a country that has been pretty chauvinistic and misogynist, if you will.
Yeah.
It's just been I guess it's just something that's deep-seated into their culture as a country. And she has tried so hard to fight that and push beyond some of those barriers and push through that glass ceiling and say, hey, look. So she went on, she became an astrobiologist. She has worked for NASA. She's done projects for NASA. And as a crew commander, she has performed, I believe, the last time I checked, it was 33 analog missions.
Dang.
And it's incredibly impressive. But she told me, I had a moment to sit with her one-on-one, just me and her in the habitat, because the other crew members were on an EVA that she and I did not participate in. We were meant to be back at base so that if there's any problems or issues, we were the comms there on base. And so we were sitting at the table just having tea. And I asked her, I said, can you tell me why me? Why did you pick me? Because even the day that our crew met in person, having landed in Hawaii, getting together so that we can all get on our shuttle to go to the base camp, we were all meeting in person for the first time. Now, we had Zooms and been in WhatsApp for a while, but this is the first we're all meeting in person. And I'm still listening to them talk. And this program was highly competitive. And I'm still sitting there going, oh my God, like, why am I here? All these people are crazy, brilliant people. Like, this still felt like I felt so little and insignificant compared to what these people were doing. And I thought, bring nothing to this table. Oh my God. So imposter syndrome was huge. And Michaela told me, she said, I really resonated with the fact that you called out the man, if you will, NASA and just the general STEM industry as a whole. You called it out and was like, hey, you've been saying space is for everyone, but you're just regurgitating the same thing. And you've put so many barriers and boxes up that you're not allowing for any type of diversity. And it's not just diversity from a race or culture. It's just general diversity of people. You've still, there's just so many layers of diversity there that you cannot just limit it to only race and culture and religion and those things that we've always leaned into. It goes a lot deeper than that. And so she loved that I had called it out. And she said, that's what stuck out to me because similarly, I have been in that same fight with the people of Slovakia that I saw so much of what I have fought with you that I wanted to bring you in to be at the table. And so I was like, wow. So the thing that I thought would keep me from being selected is what got me selected. So it was funny, very serendipitous.
I think that's one of the other things that I really wanted to come back and talk to you about is we've talked a lot about communication and even just your communication style. And I may be reading too much into this, but it feels like you've even doubled down more so on this communication style ever since this mission. But it's like you have to be comfortable saying the uncomfortable thing. And it's not to say, Josh, I think you're really ugly. It's not that. Maybe it is. And that's probably a little true. But it's not about just being able to be rude or say something that doesn't need to be said. I think there's a difference between something that just doesn't need to be said versus something that needs to be said that may be uncomfortable. An uncomfortable thing that may need to be said is you're not pulling your weight.
Yep.
And in a space mission, that may be uncomfortable to have to tell somebody. That's uncomfortable to have to tell somebody on your team at work. But in a space mission, like, hey, dude, you're not pulling your weight. That could kill all of us. It's a really big deal. And there's a lot of value in being comfortable saying the uncomfortable thing. And again, I might be reading too much into this. I don't think so. But it's like you seem to have really brought that forward in, hey, we've got to be able to have just really brutally honest conversations. We've got to be able to be very direct. Look, we still have to be respectful. We have to take the human element into this.
Yes.
Right. But at the same time, like, you and Tim need to be able to have a conversation, and you got to be like, hey, look, here's the thing, dude.
Yes.
This is what we got to do. This is what we're seeing. This is how we have to think about it. This is what we've missed. Whatever it may be, you've got to be able to have those conversations. And you've got to be able to, again, balance being respectful and human and not having to be, I hate to say it, but politically correct.
Correct.
And just be like, hey, look, I'm not going to be rude, but this may hurt your feelings.
Yes. Yes.
But we got to get past this.
Yep. And it's, again, piggybacking off the fact that you said your intention should never be to impose hurt and harm. It should always be that there's still a layer of kindness and grace there, because everybody could use kindness and grace. But we as a society have taught people that it's those, quote, saying the uncomfortable thing. Why is it uncomfortable? It shouldn't be uncomfortable. It shouldn't be uncomfortable. It should just be that you are being honest and you are being just very open and authentic and saying, hey, this isn't working because of X and Y. Can we peel that back? Can we talk about this? I need to explore this, because in order for this mission or for this project or this task to reach the output I'm expecting or to be successful, here's the things that I need to be in line, and this isn't getting us there, so we need to see why it is. And sometimes it could be egos are in the way. I find a lot of times over my career, it's been egos have been a problem. And the other thing that's been the problem is people have, by default, I think, as a species, we tend to carry, whether you want to admit it or not, insecurities. And I think that insecurities play a lot a part in how we are as workers, or as we are as colleagues, how we are as friends, as we are leaders. If you've got somebody that has a lot of insecurities and they're leading a process and their ego is also in the way, that process is never going to succeed, because they didn't check all that stuff at the airlock. They brought it in, and now what purpose is it going to? It's not serving anything. You have to check that stuff at the airlock. You cannot bring it in.
Yeah. But again, these are the things that it's so easy to talk about right here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When we're in this context, in this frame of mind, and we're talking about it on our podcast and yada, yada, it's so easy to say, but it is really hard to live that stuff in practice sometimes.
It is.
It's funny. We were talking about somebody that we both mutually admire, a guy on our team, Jimmy, because he's just one of those guys that just says it like it is. Right.
Yes.
And it's one of the things that I love about him is I just always know where he stands. We don't have to have these long drawn out conversations over something, but you got to tell you this. This is a hilarious story that's going to be one of those stories that it's a silly story, but it was a really good reminder for me. And I don't know, you'll see where I'm going with this. But so Jimmy and I were on a trip recently, the end of last year, and we were on site visiting a prospective customer. And like we always do, we had gone to the gym together in the morning and we were staying at different hotels and we needed to go straight to the meeting. So I just changed in Jimmy's hotel room so that we could leave together from there and all of that. And I had put my work clothes into my backpack that had also had my gym clothes in it. And I'm getting changed and we're getting ready to go. And Jimmy, I'll never be able to remember how he said it, because as soon as he started talking, I just started dying laughing. And basically he gave me the most incredibly thoughtful and politically correct way of telling me I stunk. And I was just dying. And I was like, Jimmy, dude, just tell me I smell bad. Oh my gosh. And he was like, yeah, dude, you really need some cologne, like before we go to this meeting. But I know it sounds like a silly little example, but it was such a reminder of, I appreciated the fact that he would just say anything, right? Like I obviously didn't realize it. And I would have been so embarrassed if I had gone through the day and gone through that meeting and smelled like crap and everybody was talking about me behind my back about how bad I smelled, right? And he was like, dude, you should probably take care of that before we get going. But two, it was funny for him and I to be able to have that conversation about, at the same time, like one of the things I value so much about our relationship is you can just tell me, like, you don't have to come up with this fancy, just be like, hey dude, you stink. I have some cologne. Let me give you some. And anyway, it was a small, simple example but think about that in a bigger context, like big things that we're trying to get done and big conversations that we really need to have about how to really do the right thing for our business and our customers and our employees. And then being able to have that kind of relationship where we don't have to tiptoe around it. It doesn't just get buried under the rug. We just talk about it and we just deal with it. And I've never experienced that, but I love that analogy of just, hey, check all that stuff at the airlock. Like when we're here, it's about the mission and that's it.
Yep.
And it's way easier said than done, but I think it's really valuable advice of just thinking about how do we really be effective in our communication, but at the same time, keeping that human element at the center of it.
Mm-hmm. It's like we go back to think about in times of our life where we've sat across from somebody and we're enjoying our conversation, but you notice they have broccoli or pepper in their teeth. Are you the person that's going to say, hey, my friend, I just wanted you to know that you've got a piece of something right here? Most people won't tell you.
Yeah.
Because they're too embarrassed. Why? Why are we embarrassed about that? Why are we too embarrassed to tell somebody something like that? Because to me, I hope that whoever I'm talking to tells me, because what if I have now left this meeting and I'm going to present something in front of my board of directors, or I'm on a podcast and there's video or something, and I didn't notice that there was like some big piece of something sitting there to tell me. So it's like an easy little practice of, okay, now I want you to keep in the back of your mind that forget what you've been taught and make yourself say it. Start there. If that's where you need to start telling people that they've got lipstick on their teeth or broccoli in their teeth or whatever. Or, hey, your fly's open. How embarrassed would you be to walk in a room and you've got toilet paper on your shoe or your fly's open or something? You'd be mortified if someone didn't tell you. And you're like, I just interacted with 5 of the people that I see more than my family, and none of them cared enough to tell me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, but it is. It's one of those things that it's harder. It's easier said than done.
It is.
We all know that good communication solves a lot of problems. Yet we're all human and we all suck at it sometimes, right? I think good communication is probably one of my favorite things to talk about on the podcast. We end up talking about it a lot and you get a lot of different perspectives from people. And then I guarantee you, I probably went straight from this podcast talking about awesome communication and I'm going to go do some really crappy communication on the call with my team. You know what I mean? Like it's just, but I think keeping those different things in perspective, and then to your point, like having those different experiences in life and then being able to find, okay, how can I draw a parallel into this or from this into other things that I do in my world? And that's why I think it's so cool that you got to have this experience And what I think is even cooler than that, and you're going to hate me for saying this, but like, I think is so cool about you is that you really maximize that opportunity. You maximize that opportunity to say, what can I learn from this? Like, how can I apply this? How can I be a better communicator at work? How can I be a better project planner for big things like conversions? How can I be more thoughtful about the processes we have in place for our technology at the bank? How can I also not lose sight of the fact that I sit behind the walls of IT within my bank, but my bank still deeply cares about the people in its community? And how can I make sure that shines through our technology? Like, you've been really thoughtful about taking those life experiences. And I think that's the coolest part about it that you should be really proud of, because it definitely shows in how you approach things.
Thank you. It's one of the things that you heard me mention earlier is that each of us as a crew member had to take a research project to this mission. And when I was notified that, I thought, what the heck am I going to take? I'm not a scientist by these traditional means by which I have formed in my mind and expect that's what I'm supposed to meet these criteria to do. I'm sitting there going, okay. So I decided, I was like, all right, I just want to study people. I want to hear from every person what their personal and professional trajectories have been. I want to know how they got to where they're at in their careers. What happened in your life or didn't happen in your life that led to this moment that you're now in this crew? So I did these interviews with people, documented it all. They ended up writing an abstract. Didn't know how to write an abstract, so I called friends of mine that were in my SpaceCon cohort that were college graduates, and I was like, hey, friend, I need to know how to do the college things that I didn't go to college for. Help. And they helped me. Okay, here's what you do. And they walked me through it. And so I spent a good bit of time writing this abstract, and after I completed it, I was like, all right, now what do I do with it? Okay, I did my homework. I did my research. That's what I'm supposed to do. Check the box. Okay, I wrote my findings from it. Okay, I did it. Well, now what do we do with it? So then it was like, all right, you can submit it to be published. I'm like, oh God, no. Why would I do that? Why would I ever let anybody read something I wrote? This is just because I was supposed to do it. So I did what I was supposed to do. Okay, that's it. So little did I know, there were other conversations being had kind of behind the scenes where I had a couple of scientific journals approach me. Hey, we really want to read your abstract. We hear that it's something that would benefit our readers. We really want to consider publishing it. I'm sorry, what? My abstract got published in 2 scientific journals, one of which is a higher learning STEM-based scientific journal, and I'm the only non-member of academia, quote, non-educated person that's ever been published in their journal.
That's so cool.
But what's so funny is my paper talks a lot about my non-traditional path to learning, how I didn't go to college, and again, still calling out things kind of still in that same vein. And I'm published in a higher education. Like, the irony of it is so funny to me.
Yeah.
That I'm calling it out, but I'm published in the same journal that they produce. I'm like, this is so funny. But I am very proud of that because, again, never in a million years did I ever think that would ever happen. And it did, not once but twice. And so I am proud of that because I feel like, again, being selected in and of itself was a huge thing. Getting to go, huge thing. And then getting to write that and then get published from it was a huge thing. But I credit it all to all of those things that were in line for me to be successful. It wasn't just me. It took a village. I had supporters. I had friends. I had things that I learned. I had gone through 2 of those SpaceCon cohorts. I had been trained and developed in a way that it set me up for that success. So it wasn't just how I woke up one morning and did it. I had things in my orbit that got me there.
I think that's, again, such a cool life lesson for you. Also now have the opportunity to pass that on to the next generation of people that you interact with, right? And you sit there and you look back, and especially while you were in it, right? You were saying, you're sitting there looking around going, what in the hell am I doing here? Like, how did I get here? What does Monica Parks deserve to be a part of this thing? But yeah, you did. You know what I mean? And then being able to take that, and whatever it may not be being a part of an analog astronaut mission. It may not be to be the CEO of a company. It may not be, like you called out earlier, whatever some traditional metric of success may be. But we all have our own different definitions of success. And we all have our own unique ideas and aspirations and goals, and being able to just empower other humans to go after those things, to see a path, to see an opportunity to look back one day and say, how did I get here? And taking that even just into your bank. And as you bring in new people into your team and into the bank, how can you really empower them to see the opportunity that they have in front of them and help them to capitalize on that? And those are pretty cool things in and of itself. And if that's all you did in life, that would still be pretty awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how has that translated into your, exactly that, being in banking? And what I think is so interesting about your story too is, we called this out earlier, how many times have I had people on the podcast, right, that are like, I used to work at a bank and then I got saved from the dark side and I work at a credit union now. And I always like to push back and joke a little bit that it's hate. I think community financial services, credit unions and community banks, they like to talk a lot of smack about each other.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think that a lot of it is a little lip service, just from the standpoint of, hey, we got to give our rival team some crap, but we still respect each other for the fact that we both are really doing the same mission, right? The same mission is to build up strong, healthy, financially sound people and communities. We just do it a little bit differently. Don't get me wrong. I think you and I would both agree that there are absolutely some 4-letter words out there.
100%.
Right? We're not talking about those guys, but you went from a credit union to a small community bank that's really doing a lot of the same things. And so how have you taken just some of your time at a credit union, your time in the space program, and all of these different things that you've learned to say, okay, now I'm a CIO for a community bank. So what? What am I going to do with it?
In my credit union years, which were long, I was there in that space for a long while, having served at 2 different credit unions that no longer exist in the same way. They both have changed lots of things. But my favorite thing about both spaces when I was there, it was the members. I loved the people. Oh my God. I loved being able to interact with people, learn from people, just those relationships and stuff. It was just, it was like chicken soup for the soul. Like, you just love it. I absolutely loved the people. And in that space for all those many years, we weren't always taught that bank is a 4-letter word. And it was like, oh my God, you don't want to ever go to a bank. They don't care about you. And so I leave the credit union space. I go into the nonprofit space for quite a while, and then recruited from that, from a former colleague that was in that space, had come over to the bank, and I recruited. And I really was kind of like, oh, I don't know that I want to come from credit unions to the bank. Nobody does that. And it felt very counterintuitive. And then the man that was recruiting me said, I want you to meet our founder. Just have a 30-minute conversation with him. And I sat down, and our founder of the bank has been in the bank space in Memphis for a very long time. Bank 3 is his 3rd bank that he has founded. He very much is a leader and pioneer in that space. Brilliant man. Adore him dearly. And I knew 15 minutes after speaking to him, I needed to work for this man. And I thought, this is nothing what I thought. It was it was so closely in line with what I always felt was the mission for credit unions and the
Yeah.
same goals that I thought, my God, we have been shaming these banks for so long that they really aren't as bad as we think it is. And I really wanted to be a part of it. And so I got on board and was like, oh my God, it's the same goal. They care about people. They really
Yeah.
do want to produce something for people. People are, that human element is still at its core. And it didn't feel like we were the bad guys. It didn't feel like the
Yeah.
bank was the dark side. But again, there are some, those big banks that are very out of touch, very disconnected from their customer base. They are still a lot of the four-letter word persona. But I have truly enjoyed being where I'm at. There are some phenomenal people. And even as the CIO, I am not in a customer-facing role, but there have still been plenty of opportunities where I have had that chance to engage with some of our customers and have conversations and things like that. And that was so unexpected because that's not typical. But I have loved all of the conversations and ideas and things that have spawned from those engagements because, again, I'm just doing my own path. Just because CIOs don't doesn't mean they shouldn't thing. Why don't you talk to some of the customers? Why don't you? Because you're a chief or because you're an IT? Why don't you have those conversations?
Yeah.
Go work with some of your colleagues that are like whether it's the head of lending or the head of your business banking or whatever, and tell them, say, hey, I want to hear from your customer. If you have a customer that has told you that such and such doesn't work or they wish that such and such was different, can you bring me in on those conversations? I'd love to be a fly on the wall. I want to hear from them. Just start to listen because there's always something that can bloom from listening. And again, that's something that I took away deeply from my time with Spacekind, which was Jedi listening and Jedi speaking. And it really taught you how to truly engage and wholeheartedly and holistically listen to someone that is speaking to you and sharing with you. So instead of being in that mindset of, I'm already thinking about how I'm going to respond and react to what they're saying, but you're missing some of what they're saying because you're not actively, truly listening from your heart, your head, your ears, your eyes. You're not really listening. So to me, if someone is speaking, I am really listening to what you're saying to me. I'm not already in that thought of what I'm going to say and respond. And so then it's really training your brain to really listen. We can gain so much of that from our customers and our colleagues, of course, but especially from whoever your customer base, whether it be bank customers or credit union members or anything in between. You have to listen to your people. You have to really listen to them. And if you're not in those spaces that condone those environments, then change the conversation. Say, I want to be in those spaces. Just because I'm in a role that typically doesn't mean it's what you have to keep doing. Tell them you want to be in the room. Listen in. Be a part of it. Put yourself in there. Change it. You're in a position where you can change the conversation. It doesn't have to be just, we've never done that or we don't do that. Why? Question it. So let's make it different. Let's be a waymaker on this and say, okay, I'm going to change that. We're not going to do it like that anymore because it clearly isn't getting us anywhere or it isn't serving us. It isn't serving the customer. It isn't serving the member. Let's change it.
Doing this podcast has been a really big lesson for me in that, in like actually paying attention and listening more. And it's why sometimes like I get caught up in the podcast and I like stutter over my words when I start to talk after somebody is, because I've been trying to really work on the like listening to you when you talk instead of exactly that, trying to think about, okay, what am I going to say next? And it is really interesting, Monica, because you do find like the more I actively try to pay attention to that and be more thoughtful about actually doing the listening part, you start to realize just how much you miss in conversation.
Yes.
And you're like, holy crap. One of the things you might find interesting as a total technology geek is that is one of my favorite silly little human elements of AI. And
Mm.
I know that sounds really
Hmm.
counterintuitive, right? But my favorite example of that is how AI has changed me doing interviews. And I used to find myself in interviews really just trying to take notes for HR
Yes.
and really just trying to, like, what is the next question I have to ask this person, kind of thing. And I'm going to be honest, like, I don't feel like I did people justice in actually listening to them. And now when I do interviews, I'm an AI note taker running. I don't think one bit about that stuff anymore. And I just listen to the person and actually feel like I've gotten to know people a lot better through that. And so that's one of my silly little, like, anytime people talk about how unhuman AI is, I mean, actually, that's one of my favorite examples for how it can be really human. Is it's helped
Yeah.
me to be more human to connect with people because it just takes my notes for me.
Yes. Yeah. That is one benefit for sure that I would completely agree with. We used to, in our board meetings and committee meetings, and then even just your general day-to-day meetings, same thing. We would always have to have somebody would be your designated scribe in the room that was in there frantically trying to document everything because everything that's being said is so important. But then you're like, wait, I missed what was just said because you're
Uh-huh.
writing or typing or whatever. So yes, that is a gift that AI has given. So yeah, I do agree with that for sure.
I find myself now too, I don't like to talk to people on the phone as much anymore, especially in a work setting. And it's partly because one, I like to actually see, so I like to have the video. I like
Yeah.
to be able to see people. But two, I literally told somebody the other day, I was on the phone with them. I was like, hey, would you mind if I sent you a Zoom call? I was like, just so I can have my AI note taker running. Because I was like, there were so many things that I wanted to take notes of. But as soon as I started taking notes, and I totally started realizing I was paying less attention to her.
Yep.
And I was like, I really, I want to both I want to not forget what you're saying, but I also want to pay attention to you. Can we move this to Zoom so I can have my
Yep.
notes? But yeah, it's Monica. That's why, like, I've been so excited to have you on the podcast is just, I think you have so many cool examples that I don't even know if you realize just how much of an impact you've had on me in our
Mhm.
conversations of, like, how you can take and blend the technology, the human, the communication, all of the learnings that you've had. I could talk to you for hours and hours on end, but I know you have a whole, like, day job and all that stuff and a bank to run. So whatever, I guess I'll let you go at some point. But before I let you go, can I ask two final questions?
Of course.
So where do you go to get information? And actually, before you answer, I want to say that I think I called this out earlier. Follow Monica on LinkedIn. One of the things we didn't even touch on today, but it's actually one of my favorite topics to talk about with her, is she is paying a really close eye on what is happening in some of the fraud and scams and different ways people are using technology as bad actors. And she is one of my absolute favorite go-to resources for just some of that stuff. So if that intrigues you, that's a whole nother podcast with Monica. That's absolutely something you should follow her on LinkedIn for. But so where are you getting your information?
Yeah, LinkedIn, of course, is a huge space that I spend a lot of time in there. I don't really do a lot of other social media, but that one definitely is where I spend a tremendous amount of time. I have a couple of people that are my top that I really pay attention to what they're posting and discussing. And then, of course, I've got some podcasts that I follow. There's really too much for me to even call out here because I consume a lot of info from a lot of spaces. But I do want to at least make note of the ones that I find to be the most impactful and that have had the most impact on me. So on LinkedIn, Dr. Roman Yampolsky, and I will spell his last name. It's
Please.
Yampolsky. He really dives pretty deep on all things AI. And like Dr. Roman, I'm also an AI antagonist. To a point, I do believe there's obviously benefits, which one of the things we did talk about here a second ago. But I'm really big in as you mentioned, the fraud, scam, scheme space that has been the majority of my career over the last 20 plus years. And that has really catapulted that space forward in ways that society just has not been prepared for.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of risk in AI that a lot of people don't talk about enough of. And Dr. Roman has dedicated, I think, all of his social and public engagement to doing so and talking about it, and how people don't measure the risk or appropriately consider the damages that can come from inappropriate and like the Wild West use of AI. So I really love the things that he says. Teresa Payton, Payton, it is Teresa with a TH. She is the CEO of Fort Alice Solutions. She was the first female CIO for the White House for Bush Senior. I believe it was Bush Senior. Maybe it was Bush Jr. I can't remember which one, but I have had the opportunity to hear her in person at several events over my career, but I've met her in person and engaged with her a few times. And she posts tremendous, tremendous valuable content on her LinkedIn. And she has a wonderful network. So highly valuable. Former CISA director Jen Easterly is another one that I follow on LinkedIn. And attorney Erin West, Erin, she is the founder of Operation Shamrock that exists to educate and disrupt pig butchering and romance scams, specifically those that are targeting our seniors and others in those sensitive communities like that it can have huge impact on. Erin's work in this environment she is such an unsung hero, and they are doing tremendous work with Operation Shamrock. Any financial institution, regardless if you're a bank or a credit union, can go out to Operation Shamrock. You can register as an FI. You can get involved and get access to resources and tools to help spread awareness and educate people about this crime because it is massive. So I highly encourage people to check that out. And then as far as the podcasts that I follow, I will tell you, of course, other than Typhoon's digital banking podcast that I do listen to.
Suck up.
There are 4 others that I listen to very frequently. One of them is Stolen, which is produced by Erin West. They really tell you all the horror stories, things that are out there happening to people. She brings on different speakers that can speak about things that they're seeing out in the wild, mitigation efforts that are out there and available, all that kind of stuff. It's tremendous. Diary of a CEO. I highly encourage people to subscribe to this podcast. I cannot tell you how much goodness is in there.
Yeah.
The Sean Ryan Show. Sean has everything from geopolitics to people researching space, people in everyday life that are military veterans that can talk about things that they see in that space. There's lots of talk about AI and cyber in that podcast. It's a tremendous podcast. And then another one called Fraudology. It's another really good one. Carice Hendrick is on that podcast, and she speaks a lot about different things in the fraud space, what's happening in the wild, tells stories and all of that. It's so valuable. I highly encourage people to check those out.
Man, you got a killer list. Thank you for sharing. Last but not least, if people want to connect with you, if they want to learn more about your story and talk to you about some of the lessons that you've learned and your different experiences, or if they want to learn more about Bank3, where and how can they do that?
Yeah. So for the bank, of course, our website is bank3.com, and it's BANK in the number 3.com. And as Josh mentioned, we are a small community, medium-sized commercial bank, really. We've got lots of good content on there, but the best way to reach me is through my LinkedIn. I'm highly active on there. I do read every DM that I get, and sometimes I may be a little slow because I get a lot of stuff in there, but I'm highly engaged on that one. So I highly encourage people, if you want to talk and connect on there, let's do it.
Monica, I feel safe in saying this because I've said it publicly on LinkedIn before, but you are a badass. There's no two ways about it.
Thank you.
I feel really honored to have had you on the podcast today. My day is a better day after talking to you for almost 2 hours on this podcast. I feel like I've learned so much and just some really thoughtful ways to go and apply some of the different pieces of advice that you've given, like, in a very practical way. So I said it before, but you are far too humble for how awesome you are. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks for being a guest on the Digital Banking Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting. I feel very honored to have been asked, and yeah, it's been fun. Love it. Hope to do it again.
For sure. Thanks, Monica.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Banking Podcast, powered by Typhone. Find more episodes on digitalbankingpodcast.com or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.